Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today we are doing another one of our Mortal Kombat drawings. We're doing Jade this time. And I'm starting much later in the day, as you might notice. So I'm going to need to be pretty efficient about this one. So with that said, we're going to be talking a little bit about design, because this is one of our Mortal Kombat ones. So we're doing a redesign, as is custom for these. And I will have to talk a lot about design, things like that. We'll be talking a little bit about various different things. But I feel like we're reaching the end of our Mortal Kombat drawings at this point, just simply because I'm kind of running out of ideas. There's plenty more ninjas, but not as many ideas. Up to a certain point, there's so many of these ninjas that you're going to start reusing ideas and stuff like that, which I don't want to have to do. And I'm already I have some of that here, but you'll see what I mean in just a moment, because I'm going to now roll the intro, and then you'll see what I have. So yeah. Alright, so this is where we're at. So, first off, I'll talk a little bit about the pose. I just wanted to do something simple. Generally speaking, with a lot of these designs, I go for simple poses that showcase the design. So therefore, no characters usually have any arms overlapping with their bodies or anything like that. Scorpion's the only one I can think of that breaks that rule, and the reason why I did that is because his design is not substantially different than Mortal Kombat 11. It's basically just the Mortal Kombat 11 design with virtually no changes. There's little alterations here or there, but that's mostly just that design. The biggest changes I made were to his mask, so therefore, that's what needs to be seen the clearest. Here, and as with most of the other ones, the design tends to be a bit more different. So, I'm going to start getting into the nitty-gritty now, so we'll start from the top. So, with the hair, this is something which is a little different than her other designs. I chose to give her the bandana as a sort of a like in Mortal Kombat 2, even though it's a design element which she sort of sometimes has, sometimes doesn't. So it's one of those things of where, again, much with any of the female ninjas, they tend to sometimes have bandanas, sometimes not. So I decided to include it here to give her a bit more of a visual connection to Kitana. And so then with her hair, I gave her a hairstyle sort of similar to her Mortal Kombat 9 hair, except here it's pushed back, whereas that sort of falls forward a little bit. So here I have it pushed back, except there's bits that fall down, and then there's this bit which is tucked over to the side here. But otherwise you can see that it ties at the back there, that it ties low. And then tucks behind her scarf. So that was the sort of little change I wanted to give her a different hairstyle. I wanted it to look sort of clean and very formed, very sort of tidy, is the thought I went for anyways, aside from these bits that fall down in front. But they fall down in front in a very sort of uniform way. So it's all very neat, very tidy, very conformed, is sort of the design sense there. Her mask is mostly similar. It's most similar to her Mortal Kombat 11 mask. However, there's elements of her Mortal Kombat 9 mask in there. I wanted to have this. I wanted to give it this sort of cheekbone shape, of where it gives the sort of focus lines down into the lower part of the chin, like that. So it almost has this sort of cheekbone shape like that, of where it has like this kind of thing out here. And so I gave her very narrow eyes. I don't know, that was just a choice I decided to make. But yeah. So she's one of the slimmer characters that I've drawn. Like Kitana is quite slim. It was quite slim, but I've also made her kind of tall. I made her kind of slim and tall, where Kitana is slim but not. It is very sort of is more of a middle point with the three female ninjas I've drawn so far, where she's a little shorter. Well, not short. She's shorter than Jade here, but Melina would be shorter than her, and then Melina is a bit broader than her. Whereas again, then we now go to the opposite end, where Jade is taller and would be slimmer again. So that's sort of what I've gone for, is that she's sort of slim and long. And so then now we sort of get into some of these other elements. So the scarf I took from Mortal Kombat 11. of the sort of Revenant design of where she has the sort of the little scarf over the top of her costume, and so I've done that here to a degree of where there'll be this scarf that just sort of sits over everything. It's not like a big scarf, it just sort of sits along around the neck. And I think it's just a nice little design on it to just break things up a little bit. And then I feel like this one's like just on the cusp of being over designed on some of these elements. So let's start going through. With a lot of the characters, I've gone for a sort of specific element to focus on. Here, what I've gone for is stripes, and sort of rings is sort of what it is almost. Because you've got these, there's the armlets here along the top of the arms, which have the black center and then a gold outside. And so, generally speaking, I stick to a small pool of colors. So usually 2 or 3 is the general sort of costume coloring. It's the same deal here. Our primary colors are green, obviously, black, and gold. And so a lot of things will have a gold trim to them, or they'll have a sort of a black center and stuff like that. So with these little armlets here, there's the black center, gold trim. With the gloves, they have, and same thing with the boots and even the center of the design to an extent. There is these sort of stripes like this, except these would all still be green. And so then the gloves have like a gold trim here, they have the black rings, and that's something which I wanted to sort of stick to, is that it's the same with the boots. The boots have the black rings, and that's sort of an element as well with the stripes on the sides of the primary piece. And so yeah, these are all fingerless because specifically Jade tends to very rarely have full gloves. It's a consistency of her designs. Very rarely does she have full gloves, so I chose not to give her them here. And so the insides of the gloves still have that sort of crossed pattern on them, and everything is very symmetrical in Jade's design, which is something which often I have not gone for the most part. Everything's very uniform, very symmetrical, very clean. That's sort of what I've gone for in a lot of this. So she's got a sash the same way that the katana does, except katana's is a fairly flat, sort of right around the middle kind of thing, whereas here this is a little bit more. It's got a different shape to it. It's not as thick. It ties more to the side as opposed to at the back. Except you can't really see the ties. You would presume that this is more tucked in, that it's been tied and then left with with nothing really dangling off. So now we've got the central piece, the central sort of part of the design, the central bodysuit. So I've gone for a few different things here, which we'll see how they look. So there's this sort of centerpiece in the middle here, above the chest, where this is just a sort of a primary black, just sort of undersuit element, which you can sort of see down here as well. There's this sort of black undersuit that goes along through everything with this, and you can see it here underneath, so that would sort of be the same sort of undersuit, this black undersuit that goes under everything. Like a short black bodysuit, something like that. And then there's these shoulder elements here, which have a black trim on them, but the inside of them would be gold. And maybe gold, I'm not sure, maybe green. We'll see how it looks. Probably gold. Gold would most likely look better. And then we've got the central piece here, where it's these long black stripes that come down into this sort of V shape at the bottom, and that comes along the chest, and then has this gold trim along the top of it. And then the inside of it has a gold trim, and then the outside of it is just the green. And so that it also has this sort of, again, the sort of V-shaped lines here, and that comes down into this sort of center line here, which emphasizes the sort of shape of the body. Now, one of the other elements I decided to add was this sort of little bit of tying here, where it would actually be like a little metal piece that ties across the chest there. And so that's sort of to evoke the Mortal Kombat 3 design, of where it has the sort of cross stitching in the middle of straight down the middle, sort of to evoke that, but I didn't want to make it cross because I feel like that would be too eye-catching, and it has to be a sort of a metal thing, because otherwise against the black it's not going to be very visible. So that's what I've gone for there. And then this comes down into a long piece here, which has these little gold trims along the side of it. Something which I'm going to do is I'm going to have a sort of a light, like a sort of a gold, or maybe not necessarily gold, but a lighter green or something like that, work from the bottom of this up a little bit, so that sort of accentuates the fact that this is a different kind of fabric along here, whereas the sort of center piece here, that's a harder material, harder fabric. Here this is a looser, less sort of hard material where it just sort of sits loosely. Again, it even sort of folds in as she's walking here, so it's a very, very loose material there. And so then we've got the boots, and the boots are very similarly designed to the gloves. They're pretty much exactly the same way designed. They've just got the same sort of, they've got 3 stripes this time instead of just the 2. They've got the gold trim at the top, gold trim along the stripes, and then there's the hatched internal area, and then there's the primary boot piece down here. This, maybe I'll make that black, I don't know, I'm not sure about that yet. The staff I've made no real changes to. It's mostly just a fairly straightforward staff. There is just the 2 handle areas, the 2 sort of primary areas where she would hold it from, here and here, which are, as you can see here, there's the little lines there to denote that that's one of the hand areas, and then up here as well is one of them. So they're sort of central, sort of not. Just that whenever you're holding it, there's a sort of a defined grip on it. But yeah, that is the general overview of this design. So it's one of the more detailed ones. Not necessarily detailed, but I feel like it sort of verges on over design a little bit. There's a little bit more going on here in terms of that stuff. And I'm just sort of hoping that I think whenever it comes down to the colors, we'll be able to see more so. Is it coming across as over designed? Is it sort of, how's it looking? Is generally what we're going to see, I suppose, as the colors go in later. But for now, I suppose I will do the details, because we're already 13 minutes in, so we got some work to do here. So yeah, this will take a little while to do these details. But yeah, I'll do the details and then I'll be back to do the colors, and I'll have a little bit more to say about the colors before we start working on that. So yeah, I'll move on. Alright, that was the details. That took a long time. So, it is now time to move on to the colors. So, in terms of the colors, Jade's green is a very different kind of green than what obviously we had with Reptile. Reptile's green is ever so slightly more yellow toned, whereas Jade's green would be more sort of central, a little bit more blue toned, as with the color Jade. Yeah, the color Jade tends to have a slightly bluer tone to its green. So we're going to try and do something like that. It's more central green to blue. Because green is one of those colors where there is a lot of variations on it. 1,000,000,001 variations on green. Green, allegedly, I don't know how true this is. I remember hearing it at some point and I've never fact checked it, so don't quote me on this. But green is, as far as I've heard, the color with the most perceptible shades to the human eye. Not necessarily that it has the most shades, but it has the most clearly distinct shades that are perceptible to the human eye. Don't know how that. Again, I've never fact checked it, not once in my life. So, you know, I could be completely wrong on that. But I'm just going to say it with that extreme layering of salt. So, anyways. So yeah, there's a few sort of noteworthy things in terms of color. Jade has a darker skin tone, so I'll have to use that. There's obviously going to be all the sort of black parts. I chose to just do the black parts of the mask with just my details because it's easier. I don't have to worry about all the nitty gritty because there's a lot of small bits on the mask, and so I just said no. I just said I'd do it in like that. I'm going to actually need to add an extra color, being a sort of a dark grey color for the scarf, because otherwise that is going to not work. Because that'll be black on this side and black on that side of it. So it needs something that is a little different. I'm also, I think I'm going to go with a gold at the bottom of this, the gold that sort of runs up it a little bit. I think they refer to that as like ombre, I think is how that would be. I'm not sure if that's how it's pronounced. It's O-M-B-R-E. That would be the sort of thing that they'd call it, of where it has one color that sort of layers up through it, and so it sort of, it dissolves up. A lot of like dresses might be designed with that. A lot of people might also have hair colors that are like that as well. But that's what we're going to do here, where we have that little bit of gold and kind of layer up through the bottom of the dress, or I suppose the skirt on it. Not dress. Through the bottom of the robe. But yeah, those are the really only remarkable things that I want to say. I'm going to have the staff glow. It'll probably glow green. Sometimes Jade's staff glows purple as well, but I'm going to go with green because that looks a bit more fitting. It's more in keeping. And I'm going to have the handles be gold. The handle areas be gold, just so they stand out a little bit more. But yeah, that's really the only things I feel like I need to remark on so far. But yeah, I will do these colors, and then I'll be back to do the painted shading and all that other stuff. So yeah. Alright, there's our colors done. I did our little bit of umber. Again, I'm assuming that's how that's said, I don't remember exactly. I did that at the bottom. Again, I made our green a bit more blue toned, ever so slightly. Again, it's center to ever so slightly blue. I had to give it a few nudges more towards into the blue category just because it wasn't quite coming out how I wanted. So I had to give it a few nudges like that. I'll be putting a glow on this. I'll leave the silver alone because I'm going to do some effects on the silver and put like a little glow. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little line through it, and that'll be how I'll do it. Is I'll put a little line through it, and then I'll blur and glow that line, and that'll be how we'll do it. So that way it'll actually look correct. I might do that even at the start of this section just before I forget to do it later. So that will be how that will look. And again, I don't think I'll put it through the whole thing, or maybe I should put it through the whole thing. I'll think about it. That's the thing anyways, but I'll do that probably at the start of this section. I like how our little gold tinge turned out on the bottom of the robe. It adds quite a bit, actually. Anyways, is there anything else I really needed to cover here? Oh yeah, I nearly forgot to put the gold in on the hair tie, but I did that afterwards. Yeah, I was originally thinking about maybe making the sash the same color as the scarf, but I actually think the scarf should be its own color and sort of sit on its own in that regard. I don't actually think it should have a different color, or I don't think it should, yeah, spread elsewhere. I think it's fine like that. Ooh. Yeah, I think it's fine like that. I don't think it needs to necessarily have a whole different color or anything. Or yeah, I don't think that color needs to be elsewhere. I think it's fine like this. Anyways, I will do this painted shading and then I'll move on. I've already selected my colors. For what I'll be doing yellow as our lightest and blue as our darkest. So, I mean, yeah, that's not to be, that's generally pretty unsurprising, I would say. Anyways, I'll move on. Alright, that's our painted shading done. So, again, not much to really go over. I added in the little bits of glow and stuff like that to the staff. Otherwise, that's all the real changes I made. So now we're gonna go and do the detailed shading, the light line, and our first grading map. We're just gonna keep sticking to the color grade that we've got going of the blue on one end, yellow on the other. That's what makes that's what makes the most sense so far. At least. Anyways, I think, just in the interest of time, I will move on, I will do this, and then I'll be back to wrap up. So yeah. Okay, that is our detailed shading, light line, and first grading map done. So, as I mentioned, pretty clean from a bluey green to a yellowy green. That's all we've got here. It's very simple. And our middle tone is our closest to what the primary green here is, where it's a slightly bluier toned green. And yeah, we're doing soft light. I have a little bit of lower opacity this time, even though this is kind of exactly how I want it to look. I put it at a little lower opacity just so that it's not so distracting. And then we're going to do some duplicates. This one needs to be a luminosity, should be below. Ooh, it should be below, it's darker below. I'll make this one, I'd say 20%. Then we need another duplicate. This one should be over everything, and then this one needs to be a color burn. How does that look on the other layers? Definitely needs to be above everything. And then make it 5%. Because that's pretty substantial even on 5%. Okay. Now we will grab our texture. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this one so far. Pretty happy with this one. I mean, this one's basically done, so I'm happy to say that this design, I think, has turned out pretty well in color. It was one of the ones where I was a little uncertain because obviously whenever I do my base sketch I don't include color, I just include sort of a bit of shading to indicate color. But otherwise I wouldn't normally go too far with it. That's 15%. I think 15% is too much, I think you need 10%. We just sort of needed to mask some of the background here as well. I also don't want it to affect the character too much. It's going to be it is very visible on the background, the texture this time, so we don't want it to be too crazy. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm pretty content to say that is done. Yeah, that was a fun one. I think the Mortal Kombat ones are generally pretty fun to do. They can vary quite wildly in terms of difficulty. This one I think actually wasn't as difficult as I was expecting it to be, because this is a reasonably detailed design even by the standards of the other Mortal Kombat drawings. But yeah, I'm content. I'm pretty happy with it even still. I think the little things like adding the little bit of rising color up through the bottom of the robe, that does a lot there as well. It adds a little bit of just a little bit of color variation in ways that it wouldn't otherwise have really been, because it's very green. This one's predominantly almost entirely green. It's in that sense it's closer to Katana in that the primary color occupies much more of the design than a lot of the other characters. Like I mean, if you look at the Ermac one, there's actually quite a small amount of red for the fact that that is his primary color. Even in Reptile, there's not a huge amount of green for the fact that that is his primary color. In a lot of them, black can dominate the design quite a bit. Here I tried to limit the amount of black that I was using, just because again I didn't want it to dominate the design as it kind of, I feel like it has in some of the prior ones. But yeah, well, I said I think I'm happy with this. I'm happy to call it there. This one hasn't run on too long. I don't want it to run on too long. A lot of the Mortal Kombat ones can run a little long, so I don't want this one to run that long. So yeah, I think I'll probably wrap up with that. So yeah, if you liked the video, do whatever it is that you normally do, whether that be liking or not, or of course, prefer if you liked it, but I can't make you do that, so all I can do is politely suggest it, which I believe I've done. If you want to subscribe, it's the same deal. Go for it. I'd like it if you did. You don't have to. No one's making you. Subscribe button is below the video. You know that already. You presumably watched a YouTube video, but you know, if you haven't. If you have a suggestion for what you'd like to see me draw in the future, you could leave a comment, politely worded, or don't do it at all. And yeah, if you choose to watch the next video, I will see you next time. So with all that said, that is us. I'll say goodbye and I will leave you. So, bye-bye.